The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Hazel N. Dukes, the president of the New York State NAACP. Welcome to African American Legends, Sister Hazel.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Well, a lot of things are going on in this world right now. What do you think the main issues facing African Americans today are?
Education have to remain at the top of our priority. Economic opportunities, health, and looking at civic engagement, which take in the political process. And so those are the three main areas that our new president, Ben Jealous, is putting. He's had several focus groups around the country, teleconference, and in February he will be presenting his program. As you know, NAACP in February 12th, 09 will be 100 years old. And of course, the next week, the kickoff for the centennial will be held in California at the Image Award. It will unveil. 100
years with NAACP. How things have changed.
Absolutely.
The NAACP was founded by Mary Ovington White and W.V. Du Bois and the great black leaders to fight the lynching, to fight segregation, to fight lack of opportunity, particularly police brutality. The areas like improving education were always there, but they weren't high on the list at that time. So how does it feel? Now, you weren't 100 years old, but how does it feel to see this new opportunity with the African American president, the Voting Rights Act, and so on? How does it feel as a member of the NAACP?
You know, I had a chance to speak to Myrlie Evers last week. And when
Myrlie Evers,
Williams, is the wife of Medgar Evers, who was, as you know, the first known. I mean, many African Americans lost their lives before Medgar did, but Medgar was shot at his home because of voter registration. And now here we have an African American going to be inaugurated as president of the United States. So I've been reading the history because they've been compiling a lot of history leading up to this centennial. And it's just fascinating to look where we was and where we've come. We haven't reached all the pennies, but I think we have a lot to celebrate in this 100 years. And when you look at the history of NAACP and read the history, they're compiling history and they got calendars to give different parts of the NAACP. When you look at that, you have to be grateful, number one, that you're living during this time. Two, you have to continue to give praises to men and women like Jackie Robinson, like Shirley Chisholm, those persons who came at the crux of the transformation of civil rights, where they had stopped lynching outright. We still have lynching today, but it's a different form of lynching. When children are denied quality education, that's a lynching to me. When people are denied opportunity for employment because of the color of their skin, that's still lynching, but it's harder to prove these days than it was back at that time. So we've lost some of the fervor with young people being agitators for rights. You know, they think if you just you know, if you're qualified, or you know, if you have your PhD or you have your master's, you know, you can walk in. Sure, you can, but you can also walk out during a process that they have that can eliminate you without saying so. And so while we accomplished a lot, and I am so grateful that I'm living at this time to see President-elect Barack Obama, to look at David Patterson, who I've known most of his life, and look at the men and women in legislators' halls across the country, in Alabama, in Selma, where the real civil rights issues were fought. They've come a long ways in it, but we still have miles to go.
Well, let's talk about the NAACP. The NAACP is a membership organization. It's built around branches and chapters all over the country. About how many members does the NAACP have nationally, and about how many chapters does it have?
Well, we have 1,700 chapters. That's across the state.
Across the nation.
I mean, across the nation. You could say, you know, you can't find a person who will tell you they're not a member of NAACP. But if you ask them for their membership card, or you ask when did they pay their life membership out, well, they can't tell you that. So the membership role is a tricky thing to talk about numbers. And I think that we have to be very careful with that. What we estimate, people that really pay their dues, which is $30 a year. There's no organization, $30 a year. There are people who are life members who have paid the $500, and then we went up to $750, who really have paid that. So with that number, and some of them on the roll has been deceased now. And what happened is, because we're a volunteer organization, to keep the rolls up to date for persons who are deceased, sometimes that number is in the number that we give as actually being the number of members we have. But I would say, give or take, people would be surprised. We way over what some people say 4,000, 5,000. Yeah. I would say we up to about 7.
Yeah, 40 million African Americans. From what I've heard, it would be anywhere from 5 to 7 million who are involved with the NAACP.
And I would say 6 would be the most. Some people say it's 4, but I would say 6.
Now, in New York State, how many chapters do you have?
We have 59 chapters.
Okay, and ranging from the north all the way to
starting at the tip end of the western area, which is Buffalo, just outside of Canada, and we come down through that. We call that our western region. We come from Buffalo to Elmira, Corning, to Syracuse, to Rome, New York. All in those areas that people, some African Americans in New York City don't even know that where those areas are. I've never been there. But those people are there addressing the issues that confront their community, and they're similar. They have police brutality in that area, but it's not as the media or the attention that is given to New York City, where the population of minorities, African Americans and Latinos and others, is not as prevalent in some of those areas, although it's growing. It's growing. And so I attend to those areas as much as I do to the downstate areas, because they are working hard. They are men and women who volunteer and give their time of service up there.
Now, this is interesting. It's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. There are all kinds of colored people in this country now. There are Hispanics and there are Asians. The NAACP focuses mainly on African Americans.
Well, you know, that is true. That is true in people's mind, but it's not true in sense. The reason Roy Wilkins fought so hard not to change that name, I guess he had a premonition that America would be turning more browning, the color really. America. And what we've done in Brooklyn, especially, we reached out to the Caribbean community and to the Korean community because of the population in that area, and they have began to join. The Brooklyn branch, who was just reorganized 3 years ago after some downtime, have a new president. You got to know he's 35 years old. Comes from
Ben Jealous.
Ben Jealous, 35 years old, Columbia, a graduate, Rhodes Scholar. Wife and daughter, 3-year-old daughter. Wife is an attorney. Civil rights, he lived in Mississippi. He's been a little civil rights activist all of his life. He comes from an interracial marriage. His mom is African American, one of the first African American young ladies to graduate from a prestige school in Baltimore. His dad was white, and so Ben has known both worlds. He, on one side, when you think about Barack and you think about him being jealous, you can see how we are moving towards younger people saying that this is our time to come and lead institutions and make changes there that need to be in the times that we're living in now.
There's always been blacks in the NAACP and whites, but I was talking about the fact that many of the African Americans had, from the slave masters and the others, had white fathers or mothers or whatever. So it's about the color that has made the identification.
Absolutely.
So much so that the NAACP has become the major frontier organization for combating discrimination based on color, whether it's lynching, whether it's a job problem, whether it's police brutality, whether it's denial of economic opportunity. In the old days, and I guess today, when something goes wrong, the people in the NAACP get together. We are going to protest.
First to be called.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things, too, that I always like to remind people, Rosa Parks wasn't just Rosa Parks in the Seepstra.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks was the secretary of the NAACP in Montgomery, Alabama. And remember, it was outlawed because they wanted the membership list. Many teachers, and if NAACP had given up the membership role, they would have been fired from their jobs. So instead of them doing that, the NAACP was outlawed for years in Montgomery, Alabama.
By the way, do you think something like that could happen? Do you think some teacher could be fired because they belong to the NAACP?
In those areas, they could have.
But now today it can't happen because it's against the law.
Absolutely, you have a law to protect that because, and that's when you look at the history of NAACP and you look at the 100 years. You look, Clarence Mitchell's wife.
Juanita Jackson.
Juanita Jackson. How you think African Americans went to law school there? Because she brought a suit when she was denied entrance into Baltimore University of Law School. And so when you look at the history here, Mrs. Macmillan, who was 100 years old, who passed 2 years ago, Ms. Macmillan was the leader in fighting for African American teachers in Baltimore City to be able to get employed. So when you look at the history, all in the unions, we have those names who people might not know about. Out of Detroit, that branch was a strong NAACP branch and fought the unions, the General Motors, the Chrysler, all those auto companies. That branch was the leadership in there. So it's been the NAACP's activities that propel the African Americans and women, because women took off what NAACP had done to propel them, well, our movement, because I'm a woman, so much, but it was mostly the white women who took on the role of being advocacy. And that's our role, as Julian Bond said, we are not social service. We are advocacy.
That's very interesting. In the early days of the NAACP, the black community and the Jewish community worked very closely together, and many of the issues that you were dealing with against discrimination against blacks also was discrimination against Jews. That relationship has fallen apart some. Where do you think it is now?
I think it's coming back together. Rabbi Saperstein out of Washington, D.C., who is the president of the Jewish Institute. There's a second name. Here, Rabbi Schneier, who have the Ethnic Understanding Foundation. He works very closely with us on issues that come. He's on the phone with us. So there is a coming back together.
Why did they fall apart?
I think the Black Power movement, some of the what they perceived as militant against Jews. Some remarks were made. They felt that it was not the Conrad collegion, friendship we had over the years. But we continue to sit with the Jewish community. We continue to sit with them to talk about things that we could agree on.
Well, part of the problem, I think, was the fact that there were some Jews in some of the leadership positions of NAACP as membership, not membership, but as board members. And some of the African Americans at that time said, we need to run our own organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you look at our life membership, Kivy Kaplan, Jewish man out of Boston. Kivy lived and breathed NAACP. Kivy Kaplan wouldn't walk into a room without having 10 life members because that was his thing for it to live on. And so we have many activities we do to honor Kivy Kaplan's legacy to the NAACP. So we've had a great history there, and I think I think what we've seen, Dr. Brown, in this past election, we've seen a new breed of young people who are shedding off their parent and grandparents' attitude. And now they saying, if America is going to be America, we got to come together. If we want change or we want reform, people who are progressive, they got to come together and with that, regardless to race, creed, or color, we got to come together to make things work. And I think the increase of young people in the electoral process now will get us further to the goals that we want to reach.
That's interesting, but some of the younger people have said that the NAACP doesn't do anything. All they do is march, and we need to be more sophisticated. You and I know that that's not directly true, but what do you do to refute that?
Well, I think that, Mr. Jealous, President Jealous has said he want to put a research group, high-powered research group together, that it comes now that when you go to Congress, when you go to your state legislatures, you need to have hard facts and data to convince these men and women that it's just not about politics, you getting elected, but you're here now to service a public, a germ public. So while we've talked about university health care, we've talked about the criminal justice system, that we need to change the way we behave in the criminal justice system. You gotta be able to come with proposals that you can work through the legislative process at every level, at the federal level, the state level, the city and the county level. And so I believe that agitation is still important. Marching is still important. But I do believe now we've come to the era where we must be able to sit down with powers to be, whether they presidents or whether they congresspersons or senators, or just here at an institution, an education institution, to have facts and proposals to say, let's negotiate from this end. Let's see, can we assist our public schools in preparing young people for higher education?
Well, this gets into another issue that many are concerned about in the African American community. The African Americans, some segment, have destructive behaviors. They have misogynistic lyrics. They have clothing that is not particularly attractive.
Absolutely.
They do not respect each other. They do not advocate for their children in school. See, they do the homework. What's the NAACP doing about that?
Well, when we've taken over many programs for New York State, Audrey Gall, a former New York City teacher, has worked with us. C. Virginia Field, when she was borough president, gave us, you can't take it on as a massive kind of thing. I think you got to take on and have some end results. We started out at PS 46 down at the Wrangell houses. We stayed there for 3 years. It had been PTA. They would only have about 4 parents or 5 parents attending. With Robin Hood Foundation, about 6 different groups went into that school and worked, got a computer lab, a top-notch library for the kids. When we walked out of that school, we had an attendance of parent teachers coming to the meetings over 40 on a regular basis. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal for to see an area where it's a housing complex, a New York City housing complex, that all the other pressures that these people have, you have to have someone who have the time to go in and mentor them as well as you do in their children, to help the parents. Now, that's what Obama, I saw Jeff Kennedy on New York One, I guess.
Harlem Children's Zone
2 weeks ago. And you know, they've started even with young children, babies. And I understand that President-elect Obama want to look at that program very closely to see how he can mirror that. But my thing is, we can't change all of it at once. I think each group, the 100 black men. I think the Academy, Eagle Academy, has shown some progress on how you take young men. The Links and the Alphas work on a program called Achievers, where they work at Harlem Hospital. And through that program, they got 300 young men have gone through higher institutions from Rice, from Thurgood Marshall. So I think if all of the organizations, if you will, pool its resources during this economic critical time, and all of it do not is not about money, Dr. Brown. Some of it is about hand and heart. Each one teach one.
Well,
if all of us take a child and mentor, take one, each life that you save is worth 1,000. Because if you save that one life then have an obligation to go back another life. So you can have a continuing of it, not just a one shot, but continual, because the child that you mentor, I mentor, you're saying to them now, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for you, and for you to do it to your peers and down the line.
Well, what about the possibility of the NAACP starting a program that says you have to increase your responsibility as a parent, as a citizen? You have to watch your language, you have to watch your behavior. I know we do that through some of the programs, but what about making it a sort of a national mantra? Some people say that's not good because it tends to stereotype certain people. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that it's a great idea, and as Mr. Jello said, he wants some research. He wants some people in research to see what can we do in changing the behavior pattern. How do you work with the total? I think changing pattern is not just one individual. You got to change the surrounding. You got to change the environment that people are in. And so it takes, I think you have to be careful with it, and you have to make sure that it's inclusive and not the stereotype, that you're not just going to the homeowner community. Take for Queens, you're not just going into St. Albans, but you would go into Baisley Park, which consists of the New York City Housing Authority. So you would try to integrate all of that so people will feel, the homeowner kid will feel the need of the kids who live in the housing project, because it might be the doctor that you could get out of the housing project, and it might be the plumber that you could get out of the St. Albans area. So we gotta figure out how we get that done in our community, because we don't want to build up classism in our own community.
Well, definitely, but again, the NAACP is sort of in the middle. On one hand, they have to protest and talk about the system. On the other hand, they have to say to the folks in the community, you've got to do better. And of course, it's more than words, it's about action. It's about the way you treat people individually. It's about the way you deal with disruptive behavior. For example, when you have disruptive kids in the school, somebody has to do something about it. And not just put them out, you have to interact with the parents.
Absolutely, and I think that when we just said that we would get security guards and the screening system, we thought that would change behavior. It did not.
Not going to change.
It did not. So that's the reason I'm saying we got to look at a total package. And I think that's what Mr. Jealous is saying. You know, we don't want to just get a one-shop thing. And when we said put security guards in there, kids weren't going to be able to bring knives and guns into school. P.S. That's not true. We've had, even with the security guards and the screening, we've had young people still to go through because the behavior and the environment they came out of was not worked with. We just did the one-shop thing. So I think that his research, getting people in to sit down in focus groups and hear what would be, because we don't want a short-term. This have to be a long-term process.
And you, as the president of the New York State NAACP, have a terrific job to do. You got to bring all your branches together. You got to focus on these ideas of education and jobs and civic involvement.
Well, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be meeting at City University on January 10th. They've allowed us. We're looking for 300 people from across the state to come, and we're going to be setting our agenda for the state, how we going to be advocates in this
for the
economic,
people of New York State.
For the people of New York State. That's our mission. That's our goal. That's why we were elected. And we got to look at our state. We are not national. They do the national thing, but we got to look at the state. We got to look at budgets for our city, our counties that we have.
On today's African American Legend, we've been talking with the dynamic Hazel Dukes, the president of the New York State NAACP. Thanks to Hazel Dukes for being with us on today's African American Legends.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. It's a pleasure always to be here with you.